Do you ever feel stuck, like you're living your life on autopilot? Are you ready to shift into high gear and reach the success you so richly deserve? Welcome to the Play Big Movement podcast. I am your host, Sharon Lechter, entrepreneur, business strategist, and best-selling author. Playing big is not about settling for good enough or being comfortable. It is about reaching your highest potential and achieving your greatest success. Join me in my Play Big movement as I interview top experts in business, money, and entrepreneurship, all ready to serve you and to help you play big, be number one in your field, live your legacy, and create maximum impact. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast with Sharon Lechter. And I'm excited today because I have a new guest, just meeting him for the first time, so we will learn from him together. Christopher Lochhead, thank you so much for being with us today.
Sharon, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let me tell a little bit of your bio, and then I usually like to just have you share it yourself. But Christopher has been a 3-time Silicon Valley public company CMO, so a lot to learn from him. Entrepreneur and best-selling author, and his new book is called Niche Down. So I'm excited to hear about that because I believe it's very consistent with the idea of playing big and making yourself unique. He talks about how to become legendary by being different, and explores the exponential value of what makes you different versus the incremental value of what makes you better. I love that differentiation. So Christopher, tell us a little bit about little Christopher and how you got to be 3-time CMO.
Well, again, Sharon, thank you so much for having me. As a young man, I struggled in school. And so I gravitated more towards the arts. And I got thrown out of school at 18 for being stupid. And so I, like a lot of young people with no education, was faced with a choice. And that choice was the opportunity that was in front of me was either a manual labor job, because nobody was going to hire me to do anything much more than that, or to start my own company. And so, of course, that's what I did. And so for me, entrepreneurship was not just a way up in the world. It was a way out of a life of struggle. I'm the product of a single mom, and, we had a great life, lots of love, but it wasn't always easy. And so the thing about entrepreneurship that I so love is that someone can start off with no money, no experience, no relationships, and no education, and really design a great business or set of businesses over time, and as a result, a great life for them and their family, and hopefully for the community that they're involved with. And so I'm just somebody who has a very personal experience of the power of entrepreneurship. And I'm very much a supporter of it. And I'm not happy with where we are in our country around entrepreneurship. We can talk about that if you like. But the Wall Street Journal declared a crisis in American entrepreneurship 3 years ago, and things are not getting better. We're at the lowest level of recorded entrepreneurship in American history. And I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good for our country. I don't think it's good for our economy. And on a personal level, the more people we have rising up and creating things of value, I think the better we all are individually and collectively.
Couldn't agree with you more. That's what our country was founded on, right? I say it's founded on free people with free speech, with free markets, creating free enterprise, right?
Yes, and creating a lot of value. And along with that value comes meaningful changes in people's lives, whether it's in their economic station or the quality of the communities they're in, or many other things that are positively influenced by successful entrepreneurship.
Yep. Well,
and then so after that, I sold, my first company failed, and I was 21 years old, and I was on the verge of bankruptcy, and things were not good. And so I, like a lot of entrepreneurs, was facing, a tremendous amount of economic uncertainty and personal uncertainty. And when your young business goes down and you got all your eggs in that basket and there isn't a basket anymore, it's quite confronting. But I picked myself back up and kept going. and ultimately ended up, Sharon, becoming the chief marketing officer for three Silicon Valley-based technology companies, the last of which is a company called Mercury Interactive. And in 2006, we sold Mercury for about $5 billion to Hewlett Packard. And so that made HP my favorite company ever. And after that, I took a bunch of time off. And then I did about a decade or so of consulting and advising. And then 3 years ago, when my first book, which, as you may know, is called Play Bigger, when it came out, I retired as an advisor and an investor. And for the most part today, I'm a podcaster and an author. I still do a little bit of advising and investing, but my primary focus today is podcasting and writing.
And your podcast is called Legends and Losers, and you actually are a pioneer in what they categorize authentic dialogue show of podcasts. So I love that, and I look forward to hearing more of them. I've listened to a couple of them, and it is definitely authentic dialogue. So when you talk about, the niche down, one of the topics you share is how to design a category leading business and brand. So talk about that differentiation, that niche down, and why it's so important, particularly in today's market.
So the interesting thing about this conversation is most people in business make an undeclared, undiscussed, unthought about, massive assumption about what they're doing. And that assumption is that they are competing for demand in an existing market category with a strategy called our stuff is better than their stuff. Faster, cheaper, bigger, smaller, rounder, square, whatever. But they're playing a comparison game predicated on a belief, like the belief in the availability of oxygen, that the best product or service wins. And the purpose of marketing is to promote the product, because when people see the product or service, they will immediately understand that it is, and I'm going to use this word on purpose, better than the thing they currently use, which in more cases than ever before is the number one product or service in the category. But when people see my better carbidingulator, they'll understand that they should switch from the carbidingulator they have today to the one that we just created. And as a result of that, most small businesses and most new businesses fail. And it turns out, when you study what the legendary entrepreneurs, what the legendary creators and innovators in many different spaces did, they did none of that. And so the first aha on this idea of niching down, on this idea of being able to create your own category, design your own space, is that legends become known for a niche that they own. And it's the category that makes the company, not the other way around. And so when Picasso is painting normal paintings that look like landscapes and faces and whatever he was painting before he started down his breakthrough path, nobody paid any attention to him. He was just another painter doing nice, good, or you might even argue better paintings, but nobody cared. And then when he started using bright colors and blocks and squares and, taking the nose and putting it where the ear should be and all that other stuff, people first looked at it and said, that looks like the work of a drunken 7-year-old. And he said, no, that's where you're wrong. It's a new type of art called cubism. And if you go to his Wikipedia page today, in the first sentence or two, you will see that he is described as the founder of the Cubist art movement. And so what's the aha? It's cubism that makes Picasso a legendary brand, not the other way around. And when he was playing a game called Better, no one cared. And then he had the courage to play a game called Different, to pioneer new ground, and promote that different, not better. And when the world saw what he saw in terms of a new style of art, he became the king, the category king of a whole new category of art, which spawned a whole bunch of other artists. And the aha is that you and I can do that in our businesses. And I don't know if you want to go here, but you and I can actually do it in our lives, in our careers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think you look back at some of those top entrepreneurs. Is that road less traveled, is creating your own niche. And one of the things when we were looking at publishers for Rich Dad Poor Dad, they all wanted us to go to green or red and black instead of purple. And we said, no, I want purple because nobody else is there. And we want, our brand of education on personal finance is unique, and we stared in the face of everybody saying your house is not an asset, right? Again, we wanted to find that way to be uniquely different and create our own niche from a standpoint of financial education. So,
well, and you did a masterful job, and your contribution to people's lives is really incalculable.
well, it's something that it was the right message at the right time. And truly, it was really an example of viral marketing before the internet, even before Amazon, believe it or not. But people found value in it because it was unique and different. It wasn't the same message that they continued to read. And I think it was able to jar them into thinking about doing things differently in their lives. So, it was really incredible to know that we had a small role in making people wake up and take control of their financial lives. But it's still a huge.
Well, and you folks were what I would describe as intuitive category designers. You intuitively understood that for this amazing set of insights and ideas and teachings that you had, for it to resonate in the world, it had to, and I'm going to use this phrase on purpose, stand out. No, people, we don't need more of the same because we've already got it.
Exactly. And so you go into bookstores today, those few that are still left, and you see a lot of purple books. And so it's like we created that, but a lot of people are doing that, compare and copy and that type of thing. And it is so important. I can't agree with you more to stand out. And that kind of brings us to what you mentioned at the very beginning, and that's crisis of entrepreneurship in America. I'd love to drill down on that with you. Why don't you share a little bit of your thoughts on that?
So, I would encourage everybody, Sharon, the amazing folks at the Brookings Institute have done some wonderful research here, and I can send you the links if you like, but they've been tracking entrepreneurship, and I don't have the data right in front of me, but what I do know is we are way below the level of entrepreneurship in the 1970s. More companies die in our country every week than are founded. And the Wall Street Journal, as a result of the Brookings Institute research and some others, has said there's a crisis in American entrepreneurship. The millennials are now, the data shows, on track to be the least entrepreneurial generation in American history. And the irony to me about all of this, Sharon, is I believe, and we can talk about why if you like, this is absolutely the greatest time in history in the United States of America, best I could tell, to be an entrepreneur. And yet we have this crisis. And I'll say one more thing, and then I'd love to get your thoughts and reactions. I'm not generally a very political person, but we are in a political season in this country. And I do not hear Republicans or Democrats at the state level or at the federal level having a meaningful conversation about A, that this crisis is even going on, and B, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to take responsibility for creating an environment for harnessing the innovation and capabilities of people who want to swing out and try to break and take new ground, take some risk, and enable that? And this comes on the heels of a financial crisis where the American people bailed out Wall Street, and yet the entrepreneurs who start the pizza parlors or the small software company or the local advertising agency, the small businesses that sponsor our baseball teams in our communities, if you read the Brookings Institute research, you see they point to a set of governmental programs and policies and tax approaches that disadvantage small business and advantage large business. And I am disgusted by the Democrats and the Republicans because I don't hear anybody talking about it. And if they are, they're certainly not talking about it with anywhere near the level of frequency or scale that they should be.
Well, let me just add to that. I mean, during the financial crisis, I had the honor of President Bush appointed me to the first President's Advisory Council for Financial Literacy, and I served both Bush and Obama under that. And so I was on both sides of the aisle. I will tell you that of that council, both times, nobody on the council but me was an entrepreneur. And when they were talking about financial literacy, they were teaching, the compound interest, not entrepreneurship. And I was the squeaky wheel that kept talking about entrepreneurship. I mean, that if you want to level the playing field and let everybody have the opportunity to create value in their lives, we need to intrigue them to have that entrepreneurial spirit. And so I couldn't agree with you more that there needs to be more focus on innovation and opportunity, and less on just teaching how to write a check. So the spirit of entrepreneurship, I agree with you. It's never been easier to start a business. It's never been easier to market a business. I mean, with the internet, it gives us a more level playing field to compete with the big boys. But a lot of people think they own a business, but they really just have created their own little job. And so it's important for me to really encourage those people that have businesses. Way too many businesses are still hobbies. They're not really focused on building a true entrepreneurship endeavor. So,
yeah, amen, hallelujah, sister. And bless you for being a pioneer. And I think more of us who are in positions of influence need to make it a topic. I do not see this as a political topic at all. I do not see this as a party. I am not affiliated with a party. I'm not a registered voter of either party. I think, just my opinion, you should think about the issues and things that matter to you. And some things I agree with the Democrats on, and some things I agree with the Republicans on, and some things I think they're morons about. And I think that's good. I think we need thinking and discourse in our democracy and in our economic system. But what I do know is, for the most part, very few people are talking about this, and I don't see one Democrat running for president talking about entrepreneurship at a meaningful level. Yang is talking about AI and things like that. I think that's important and a topic that's not getting enough attention. But I don't see that happening on the Democratic side. And frankly, I'm disappointed that we have a self-proclaimed entrepreneur in the White House that almost never talks about entrepreneurship in America. What's going on?
well, I think, I do agree with the fact that they're not addressing entrepreneurship. I think there's been an avoidance, certainly on the Democrats' part, to talk about the economy at all, because the relatively strong economy is not something they want to talk about. They want to take pot shots on other things, but there is definitely not enough attention on either side. And the President Trump, we talk about discourse. There's something we need to come into play as civil discourse. There's so much angst and anxiety in both directions. I fear the next year and a half before election time is going to be just as tumultuous as it was last time. Certainly, it doesn't seem to be calming down. And I hope that people see the opportunity to start their own business. With so much money stayed on the sideline for so long because they weren't quite sure where it was going to go. We need to encourage both small and large businesses to invest in themselves, to grow and to build those foundations. Because as we started this, that's, the people who don't have college education, who don't have a career, still have the opportunity to create a life they deserve by becoming entrepreneurs. I talk about, we have plenty of problems and plenty of needs. And if you solve a problem, serve a need, you can create a business around it and even create intellectual property, how you stand out differently. So one of the things on top of what you're talking about is that I teach a lot is intellectual property and the importance of allowing you to stand out and make, as you said, make your place in the world. And that's one of the other topics you talk about, how to make your place in the world. So for those people that are watching or listening that may have been thinking about entrepreneurship, and there isn't a lot of media about the fact that entrepreneurship is dropping, because as it relates to women, women are starting businesses quicker than they ever have, but they aren't building those businesses as true businesses. They're more hobbies. And so I'm trying to get women to wake up, to put that foundation in so they can get above that $1 million mark. Too many are still way in the, just basically they call them a business, but they're not. So talk a little bit about how someone who wants to, how they can make a place for themselves in the world.
Yeah, I'd love to. So the interesting aha is that most people, most entrepreneurs, when they think about their strategy for success, there's two big levers or levers, depending on how you want to pronounce it, that they pull. One is, let's build a legendary company. And so we want to whatever the things we think are important. We want to have a good location if that matters, or we want to think deeply about our business model and how we make money. The legendary businesses make money when good things happen for customers, as opposed to, for example, the airline industry with all their add-on fees. When our baggage they charge us for, those are when a bad thing happens for us, a good thing happens for them. That's a bad business model. But so you want to have a great company with a great business model and an ability to scale and an incredible culture and so forth. And then the second one is, of course, want to build a legendary product or service. And I think in no way anything I say about building businesses, I want to give the impression that I don't love great products. And I think more and more today, we have to have a legendary product. And that's where most entrepreneurs stop. And what they think is if we have a great business and a great product or service, the world will figure it out and we'll beat the competition. And they're playing a game called capture demand. They're playing a game called comparison. The simplest example of this is virtually every car ad we've ever seen on TV in the town that we live in. And what do they say over and over and over again? Come on down, we have the best selection and we have the best prices and we have the best service and we won't be undersold and we're open on Sunday and our service is the best service and we're in a great location and come see us. Oh, by the way, we're having a big sale. No one will beat us on price. Come down this weekend. That's what they say. And all of that is a comparison game. They are inviting us to compare them on those dimensions: product selection, service, price, location, or whatever the other hours of operation, whatever the dimensions they say are important about their business. They're literally asking us to compare to a competition. And so businesses that play a comparison game predicated on the acquisition of existing demand are fundamentally in a race to the bottom. They're fundamentally not different, not distinguished, and they're setting themselves up to have very little competitive advantage, if anything. Companies that say we're different are the companies that change the game. I'll give you a simple example, one of my favorites of late. There's a small restaurant chain here. I live in Santa Cruz, California, not too far from the San Francisco Bay Area. And this restaurant chain is in the San Francisco Bay Area. And as you know, restaurants are some of the most, have the highest, some of the highest rates of failure. And they are a sushi restaurant. And so just, you can imagine the typical sushi restaurant. And the typical sushi restaurant competes on all those comparison dimensions that I mentioned: how good the food is, how good the service is, how good the selection is, et cetera, et cetera. So they decided not to open a sushi restaurant in any traditional way and not to compete on comparison, but to break and take new ground and be different. And the name of the restaurant chain, Sharon, is Sushirito. And they are the original sushi burrito. And they thought about sushi from a whole other perspective. They had what you could think of as a market insight, which is many of us eat on the go and many of us love sushi. But if you ever try to eat sushi on the go, what you know is if you're driving in your car, you're going to end up with soy sauce in your lap, right? Or even if you go, to the park or sit outside or whatever, you got to get all those trays, and it's not a portable, it's not effectively a thing you can really do that with. So they said, well, what if we stylized a sushi roll like a burrito? So it's actually a giant sushi roll, looks kind of like a burrito. Mm-hmm. And ta-da, you now have portable sushi solving the problem: how do I eat sushi on the go? And you have a highly differentiated business. Well, guess what? There's a chain or 6 or 7 of them, and the business is thriving. It's not just another sushi restaurant. It's the first sushi burrito restaurant.
I love that. That's a great story. I love that. That's perfect. And so, as we challenge each of you watching and listening, think about how you're setting yourself apart. And I love you just made the comment race to the bottom in the middle of what you were talking about. And I love that because you see that so many times when somebody's they're doing the same thing everybody else is doing, but they claim they're doing it better and cheaper and faster. And it's like, okay, well, what do you do that's different, right? make
Yeah. And here's the aha. And I got this insight from my friend Eddie Yoon, who's the author of this amazing book I recommend called Super Consumers. And he's really the category guru in the Fortune 100. And he said, one of the things to know about whether you're truly distinguishing yourself in a meaningful way as a pioneer or leader in a new market category is how switchable are you? How easy is it in the mind of the customer or buyer or consumer to go from whatever it is you offer to a comparable product? And the larger the perceived inability to switch, the higher the differentiation around the category that you're in. And so if you go to Sushi Rito and you decide you like that, and you say, okay, maybe I'm in a part of the country where they don't have that. Sushi Rito's not there because there's only 4 or 5 or 6, whatever it is, and they're a local chain, right? Small business owned by a few folks. So if you're in Denver, they're not there yet. Well, now what do? There isn't really a comparable. That means their differentiation, their category design is radically different. And the big aha is part of it is achieved by having great differentiated product. I don't want to be ignorant or silly about that. But the real product of a business is the perception of the business. And the product contributes meaningfully to creating perception. I don't know whether or not there's really a comparable to Sushi Rito or not, but the perception they create, and they market it as such, the original sushi burrito, is they're it. And you're either having a Sushi Rito or you're not. And businesses that are that highly differentiated stand out, Sharon. You said that magic phrase, they stand out in a way that businesses say, our sushi's better, faster, cheaper, nearer, whatever, than theirs. That's the comparison trap.
I love that. And I love the comparisons that you're making. Is everyone needs to listen to this and apply it in your own business. Certainly, there are a lot of people out there that are teaching entrepreneurship, and there are people teaching financial literacy, and it's constantly today it's harder for me to differentiate myself because so many people are singing similar songs. So part of differentiating yourself is also being recognized as the authority, and staying on top of your game, and being aware of what's happening, and making.
Sharon?
Yes.
Would you mind if I interrupted you on this and gave you a little unsolicited advice?
Yes.
Here's the other insight. When you're the category designer, creator, and you become the category leader, the category queen, the category king. And in my first book, Play Bigger, we did an analysis of tech companies to see what happens around value creation in the category. We built a big data store of every venture-backed tech company founded from the year 2000 to 2015. And what we found was the category queen or king takes 76% of all of the value created in the market. Okay, so now I want to get to you. You're the category queen in financial literacy.
Oh, that's a great new branding strategy, Angela. I hope you're listening.
And I'll tell you, there's only one branding strategy for the category queen. And that's, hey, I'm the category queen. I invented this, right? Who are you kidding? There's this great scene. I don't know if you remember the movie City Slickers.
Oh, of course. We talk about it all the time. We own a ranch, so we offer City Slicker experiences. CherryCreekLodge.com. Look it up. Come visit.
Oh, I'd love to come visit you. I rode a horse for the first time in my life a year ago. I'm addicted now.
Well, look it up. CherryCreekLodge.com.
So you remember that scene with Jack Palance, the old cowboy, is taking the City Slicker dudes, Billy Crystal and the other couple guys. And I can't remember what they're talking about, but he decides he's going to put them in their place. And he turns and he looks at them and he says, and then he uses a word that starts with S and ends with T, bigger than you, right? And so if you are the category queen, you are what we call today the OG, the original gangster. You, SHIT, bigger than them. And the only thing there is for you to do in your marketing is say, hey, I'm the category queen. Get out of the way.
I love it. Okay, I now have a new way to introduce myself. I love it.
Yeah, don't kid yourself about who started the party in financial literacy and empowering millions of people to get their house in order and become financially free. Don't be confused where this started.
As referenced by Christopher Lochhead. Thank you very much. So as we get to this point, because our purpose today is to highlight you, my dear. And so legends and losers, how can they find you? Tell us a little bit how people can follow more of what you share.
Yeah, so we rebranded our podcast last December, and we wanted to really center it on sort of what, legends and losers in the beginning. The sort of thought was, let's map the journey that around failure, because the mantra being, you can't be a legend without being a loser. And what ended up happening over time was we were having that conversation, but the conversation in the podcast sort of naturally evolved to that, how failure contributes to success, but with this other dimension, which is, and then the pathway to success is actually about radical differentiation. It is about creating your own niche. It is about not just finding a place, but actually making or creating a place for yourself in the world. And so we renamed the podcast Follow Your Different in December of 2018. And then a remarkable thing happened, Sharon. This is an example of the power of a niche down. The content of the podcast didn't change very much at all. We tightened up a few things. We changed the theme music a little bit, but I mean, it's the same podcast. It's a focus, much like you have, on authentic dialogues with people about what are the things in business and life and in marketing, in my case, that make a difference. Anyway, we changed the name. We kept on moving forward. And in early July of this year, I wake up and there's a note on my phone from Kevin Miller, who's the host of the Ziglar podcast. And he says to me, "Hey, dude, do you know you have the number 53 podcast in America?" And there's this thing I'm sure you're aware of called Chartable that tracks the podcast charts. I didn't even have a Chartable account. I wasn't paying attention to these things. Every once in a while, my producer will make me look at download numbers, but I really don't pay that much attention. Anyway, we blew up in July, and then we launched a second podcast, a shorter marketing focused podcast in late July. And we now have 2 podcasts charting in the top 200 and in the top 5 in business. And the powerful learning for me is a lot of it had to do with the niche down on switching from legends and losers to follow your different. And the other big learning for me is the content of the podcast is not any different. What's changed is the niche and the brand. And so I find it highly ironic that the guy who teaches this did it, I have no change in my product. And it was the getting the legends and losers thing was fun and it worked and we had success with it. But I kind of felt like it wasn't right anymore. And for 6 months, it just drove me nuts. And when we niched down and aligned our brand with what we were really talking about, which is, to your point earlier, the people and the companies that take the road less traveled and what that road's like. When we niched down on that, within 6 months, there's 750,000 podcasts.
I love it.
And so I'm just living proof of a niche down.
It's called walking the talk, Christopher, right? You may not know the intent at the time, but certainly you got the results. You created your own niche. So how can people find you?
Yes. The best place to find me is lochhead.com, LOCHEAD.com.
Wonderful. So please go visit with him. And Christopher, you're going to hang out with me for a little bit because we're going to do a little shorter podcast recording for the private Facebook group called Play Big Movement with Sharon Lechter, where we get a little more relaxed and get into I think we talk about, you're going to share how you can take something most people see as a loser and make it legendary. And we're going to talk about some of the things that you do to create and stay as successful as you are. So Christopher, thanks for being with us today and holding there for a few minutes. And all the rest of you, thank you so much for listening to this segment. I think it's one of my favorites. It's been great. And it really is. It's the time, it's never been better to start and create your business, but stand out. be legendary, create your niche, take that road less traveled. So love you all. Thank you. And until the next time, take care. Thank you for listening to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast. Please subscribe to iTunes and leave us a review, as well as join us in other areas of social media, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Sharon Lechter, and for Facebook, author Sharon Lechter. Thank you so much and have a fabulous day.